The Galactic Empire had been at the height of its power for centuries, controlling entire star systems with ease, and yet something in the deepest corners of the galaxy remained hidden, a mystery that had eluded even the most advanced technologies and prying minds of the Empire for generations. It all began with a signal that broke through the static of the galactic ether, like a long-forgotten voice calling out from the abyss, a strange frequency from an uncharted planet located in the most desolate region of space. Commander Solara had heard of this part of the galaxy, but it was always referred to as the graveyard by the Empire, a place where ships vanished without a trace, or returned with crews who could not recall what they had seen or experienced there. The signal was faint but persistent, its source coming from the surface of a planet long thought abandoned or perhaps destroyed. It contained nothing more than patterns of data that no known species had the technology to produce, but the patterns were undeniable and clearly artificial. It was a message from the past that seemed to call out to anyone who could understand the complexity of its signal. Solara was chosen for the mission to explore this enigmatic source, as she was one of the few commanders who had successfully navigated the unknowns of the galaxy's most dangerous regions. Her reputation was built on uncovering secrets buried deep within the fabric of space itself. When Solara and her crew arrived in orbit around the planet, it was as desolate as expected, with jagged mountains and vast craters littering the surface. But there was something else, something not quite right about the place. The signal had led them to this barren world, but its true purpose remained unclear. As they descended into the planet's atmosphere, Solara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Her instincts as a commander told her something was waiting, something older and more dangerous than any enemy she had ever faced before. The landing was smooth despite the storm clouds swirling above, and as the team made their way across the surface, they found something that shouldn't have been there. Ancient ruins sprawled across the landscape, the remnants of a civilization unlike any they had ever seen. The ruins were massive, stretching for miles, and made from materials that couldn't be identified by any database in the Empire's archives. Yet their design was unmistakably deliberate. Every structure seemed to be built with an ancient purpose that went beyond simple habitation. Something more was hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. As they ventured deeper into the ruins, they began to see more clues, small fragments of advanced technology scattered across the landscape, pieces of equipment unlike anything in the Empire's records. The most startling discovery came when they stumbled upon a large vault buried beneath a collapsed building. Inside the vault, they found walls lined with holographic projectors that displayed strange symbols and images of a people who once called this world home. Commander Solara watched the flickering lights of the holograms as they showed scenes of human-like figures busy with tasks that seemed foreign and ancient. Their technology was beyond the Empire's understanding, and yet somehow familiar. It was as though they had once been part of a great civilization that stretched across the stars, but had disappeared from history without a trace. The team's excitement grew as they realized that they were on the cusp of discovering something monumental. But as the last of the holograms flickered out, a deep rumble shook the planet's surface, a low thrum that seemed to resonate from deep within the planet's core. It was a warning, and before Solara could order her team to fall back, they realized that the ruins weren't as abandoned as they had assumed. They weren't alone on this forgotten world. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and Commander Solara's instincts kicked in. She signaled for the team to take cover behind a cluster of jagged stone structures. The rumble subsided, but the air felt thick with tension. Something wasn't right, and they were no longer alone. The silence was deafening except for the soft click of equipment as her team quickly checked their gear and prepared for whatever might come next. The discovery of the holograms had been a breakthrough, but now it seemed as though the planet itself was warning them to leave. Solara moved toward the vault's entrance, a large stone doorway carved into the side of a mountain. She scanned the surroundings, looking for any signs of movement. The ruins around them were ancient but not completely abandoned. The architecture was precise, deliberate, as if the builders had known they would one day return, or perhaps knew they would have visitors. She couldn't shake the feeling that this place had been waiting for them, or for someone else to find it. The team pushed forward, entering the vault. Once again, the heavy door creaked as it opened, revealing a vast chamber. Inside, the walls were covered in strange markings and diagrams etched into the stone itself, glowing faintly in the dim light. The center of the chamber was dominated by a large cylindrical structure, its surface smooth and dark, as though it had been untouched for millennia. The structure pulsed with energy, and the closer Solara got, the more it seemed to hum with life. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. As she approached the source of the energy, something about it felt alive. Inside the cylinder was a projection flickering between images of star systems and complex diagrams of what appeared to be energy manipulation technology, far beyond anything the Empire had ever seen. Solara motioned for one of her engineers to examine it, and as he approached the cylinder, the projections stabilized. The diagrams became clearer, intricate designs depicting vast networks of power flowing across distant worlds. The more the team examined the projections, the more they realized they weren't just looking at an ancient power grid. They were looking at something far more significant, the blueprints of a lost empire, one that had once stretched across the galaxy. The designs weren't just theoretical, they were practical and highly advanced. The human-like figures in the holograms were manipulating energy on a scale that dwarfed anything in the Empire's current capabilities. They controlled entire star systems with ease. The technology in front of them was the key to understanding how humanity had once reigned supreme over the galaxy. Just as the realization hit her, Solara felt a shift in the atmosphere. The air became heavier, and the hum of energy grew louder. Her team exchanged nervous glances. Something was changing. The structure was responding to their presence. She turned to her lieutenant, who had been monitoring the external environment. His face was pale as he reported that a large group of unidentified ships was approaching the planet's atmosphere. The vault's entrance trembled as if it too was aware of the impending arrival. The hum in the air grew more intense as the energy source activated. Another surge of power rippled through the chamber, and the projections flickered violently. Solara shouted at her team to retreat, but it was too late. The light from the cylinder blazed brighter and brighter until it consumed the entire vault. Outside, the ground shook as if the planet itself was waking up, and the team scrambled to find cover. The vault was no longer just an ancient structure. It was now a beacon, a signal that had activated something deeper within the planet, something ancient and powerful. And the worst part was that they weren't the only ones who had noticed. The light from the vault slowly dimmed, but the tremors beneath their feet continued. Commander Solara's heart raced as she motioned for her team to gather. They couldn't afford to stay exposed much longer. The unidentified ships in orbit were drawing closer, and the planet's sudden reaction was more than enough to confirm their worst fears. They were no longer alone, and they had likely triggered something far bigger than they had realized. The ground shook again, but this time it felt different, more deliberate, like something was awakening from deep within the planet. As Solara and her team took cover in the nearby ruins, they heard a low rumble, almost like a distant roar, reverberating through the ground beneath them. A group of figures appeared in the distance, moving swiftly toward their location. The figures were humanoid, but their features were obscured by cloaks and helmets, their faces hidden. They moved with practiced precision, clearly not the kind of people who wandered into ruins by accident. "Hold your fire," Solara ordered quietly, her hand resting on the sidearm at her waist. She needed to assess the situation before acting. They could be hostile, but there was no way to know for sure. As the mysterious figures drew closer, the wind picked up, kicking up dust and debris. The air was thick with anticipation. The team stayed hidden, crouched behind a shattered structure, watching as the figures moved past. From the corner of her eye, Solara caught a glimpse of something strange. There was something almost familiar about the way they moved, the way they carried themselves. Their bodies seemed to move with the same grace and efficiency she had only seen in the most elite Imperial soldiers. The figures were not just survivors. They were trained, disciplined, and highly organized. Then one of them stopped, as if sensing something was off. The figure turned toward their position, and Solara's pulse quickened. In a swift motion, the figure reached for a device on its belt and activated it, causing a low humming sound to fill the air. The sound intensified, and suddenly, it was as though the very planet itself was responding to the presence of the intruders. The figure stepped forward, its movements fluid and calculated. It was only a few paces away from where Solara's team was hiding. Then the figure spoke in a voice that was calm, but with an unmistakable authority. "Your presence here is not accidental. You are not the first to come looking." The voice sent chills down Solara's spine. These weren't just survivors. They were part of something far bigger. The human-like figures in the holograms, the ancient power grid, they were all part of a larger, long-buried legacy, and these people were its living testament. Solara hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to respond. She glanced at her team. Each of them was waiting for her to take charge. After a brief pause, Solara stood slowly, hands raised in a gesture of peace, signaling for her team to stay back. "We came to explore," she said cautiously, her voice steady, but filled with curiosity. "We're not here to cause harm." The figure did not lower its weapon, but did not raise it either. It merely studied her with an intensity that seemed to pierce through her very soul. The tension hung thick in the air, and for a moment, everything seemed suspended in time. Then, without warning, the figure's stance softened. The hum of the device stopped, and the figure stepped back. "Follow," it said simply, turning to walk away. Solara exchanged a quick glance with her team. There was no turning back now. They had found the humans, and whether they were friend or foe, they would have to learn their secrets. The commander motioned for her team to move forward, keeping a safe distance as they followed the mysterious figures deeper into the ruins. As they walked, Solara couldn't help but feel a strange sense of awe mixed with trepidation. The humans here were not just survivors of a lost civilization. They were its inheritors. And they had been waiting for someone like her. The strange procession continued deeper into the heart of the ruins. Solara and her team followed the humanoid figures at a cautious distance, moving through what seemed like an ancient city that had been swallowed by time. The structures were tall and imposing, yet beautifully crafted, as if made to last for millennia. There was a deliberate elegance to the design, a stark contrast to the harsh, barren landscape outside. It felt as though they were walking through the remnants of a forgotten era, an era that had been erased from history. The figures led them to an enormous chamber, hidden beneath the ruins. It was unlike any place Solara had seen before. The walls were lined with intricate carvings that told stories of a civilization so advanced it seemed to defy belief. Holographic images flickered to life on the walls, showing scenes of bustling cities, advanced technologies, and interstellar fleets stretching across the stars. These weren't just relics of the past. They were vivid memories, preserved for eons. At the center of the room was a vast, circular platform. It hummed with energy, and as Solara approached, a low voice resonated through the chamber, as if the room itself were alive. "You seek the truth, Commander Solara," the voice said, though no one had spoken. It was as though the room had acknowledged her presence. But the truth is not easily given. It must be earned. Solara stood still, absorbing the weight of the words. The air was thick with anticipation. The humanoid figures stepped aside, revealing a figure standing at the far end of the platform. She was tall, with striking features and an air of quiet authority. Her eyes, sharp and unwavering, fixed on Solara. She was human, no doubt about it, but there was something extraordinary about her, something that made Solara feel as if she were in the presence of a being far beyond the scope of ordinary mortals. The woman spoke, her voice calm but laced with ancient wisdom. "I am Lyra, leader of the surviving faction of humanity. Welcome to our sanctuary, Commander." Solara's breath caught in her throat. The realization hit her like a wave. These were the descendants of the humans she had heard about in ancient legends, the ones who had vanished from history, leaving only whispers in the wind. "You've heard the stories," Lyra continued, "of humanity's fall from grace, of our betrayal, and of our retreat into the shadows. But what you do not know, what the Empire does not know, is that humanity did not die out. We chose to hide. We chose to survive. A cold shiver ran down Solara's spine. She had suspected that the humans she had encountered were more than just survivors. But this was something entirely different. Humanity hadn't disappeared from the galaxy. They had gone into hiding, preserving their knowledge, their technology, their legacy. They had done so willingly, knowing that their time would come again. Lyra stepped closer, her gaze never leaving Solara. The Empire believes that we were weak, that we fell because of our own hubris. But they are wrong. The Empire's history is built on lies, and it is time for the truth to be known. The words hung in the air, heavy with significance. Solara felt the weight of them settling on her shoulders. The humans before her were not the primitive species the Empire had thought them to be. They were the architects of much of the galaxy's current order, the ones who had once shaped the stars themselves. And now, they were waiting for the right moment to return, to reclaim what was once theirs. The Empire's grip on the galaxy is built on the remnants of our empire. Lyra continued, her voice rising with quiet conviction. And it is only a matter of time before they realize that we are still here. But when that time comes, Commander, it will not be with weapons or armies. We will return through our knowledge, through our legacy. We will awaken the galaxy to its true potential. Solara stood there, stunned, as the weight of Lyra's words sank in. The galaxy had been living in a lie. The Empire had erased humanity's legacy from history, and now they were about to pay the price for it. She had a choice to make, a choice that would not only define her future, but the future of the galaxy itself. The silence that followed Lyra's words hung heavy in the air, thick with implications. Solara stood frozen, the weight of everything she had learned pressing down on her. Humanity, the true humanity, the one erased from history, was alive, thriving, and they were ready to reclaim what was once theirs. She had thought they were long gone, nothing more than a myth whispered among the stars, but now it was clear they had never died. They had only bided their time. As Lyra's words settled, the atmosphere in the chamber shifted. The once faint hum of energy seemed to intensify, vibrating through the air like a pulse. Solara's mind raced. The Empire, her empire, had no idea what they were up against. They believed they were the dominant force in the galaxy, with their endless fleets and fleets of soldiers, their technology unrivaled. But they were wrong. Lyra stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. The Empire has built its power on the remnants of our civilization, she said softly. They do not know the full truth, but they will. And when they do, they will fear us. Solara opened her mouth to speak, but the words stuck in her throat. Her entire life, she had served the Empire, believing in its superiority, its mission to bring order to the galaxy. But everything she thought she knew was now called into question. The Empire had lied to her, to everyone. Humanity had never been wiped out. They had merely withdrawn, choosing to leave the galaxy in the hands of the Empire and its endless wars. The realization hit her like a storm. The Empire had always been fragile, built on the remnants of a once great civilization that had hidden itself away. The truth was buried beneath layers of lies, and now that truth was ready to come to light. I cannot speak for the rest of the Empire, Solara said finally, her voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside her. But I do know this. If the Empire were to learn of your survival, they would do anything to ensure your destruction. Lyra's expression remained calm, but her eyes darkened with a quiet understanding. That is why we have waited, she replied. We knew the Empire would come for us one day. We have prepared for it, but we will not be hunted like animals. We will return on our own terms when the galaxy is ready to understand what we have to offer. Solara's mind spun. She had seen the remnants of humanity's technology, the blueprints for something far beyond what the Empire could even dream of. These people, these survivors, were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for a new order, an order in which the Empire had no place. As Lyra spoke of their plans to reclaim the galaxy, Solara's thoughts drifted back to the signal they had intercepted, the strange, cryptic transmission that had led them to this world. It was not just a signal, it had been a beacon, calling out for someone to come and discover the truth. She had answered that call, and now everything was changing. Back on the Imperial flagship, the leadership of the Empire was already receiving reports of the strange happenings on the planet's surface. The signal had grown stronger, and now there were rumors of a hidden force within the planet's depths. Commander Solara was still in contact with her superiors, but it wouldn't be long before the Empire realized the full scale of what they were facing. Some in the Empire's high command would dismiss this discovery as a mere anomaly, a relic of the past that could be contained. Others, however, would see it for what it truly was, a threat. A threat to the Empire's dominance, its control over the galaxy. Solara felt a knot form in her stomach. The choices ahead of her would not be easy. She was no longer just a commander in the Empire's service. She was an integral part of a much larger game, one that would determine the fate of the galaxy. As she looked at Lyra, the weight of the decision settled in her chest. The galaxy had been shaped by secrets and lies, and now those lies were coming to the surface. The Empire would have to make a choice, adapt or fall. And Solara was about to find out just how far the Empire was willing to go to maintain its grip on power. Commander Solara could feel the tension building in her chest as the weight of her choices grew heavier with every passing moment. The stark contrast between what she had been taught to believe about the Empire and the undeniable truth standing before her was like a chasm she wasn't sure she could cross. But there was no turning back. She had already taken the first step into a world that would change everything. Lyra's calm voice broke through the fog of Solara's thoughts. "You understand now, Commander. The Empire is not the force it pretends to be. They built their empire on the bones of humanity, of those who shaped the galaxy and then vanished from history. It is time for us to return, but we cannot do it alone." Solara glanced around the chamber, the hologram still flickering on the walls, showing glimpses of the ancient civilization that had once thrived across the stars. These humans had been more than survivors. They had been pioneers, explorers, and builders of entire star systems. The technology they had developed was so far beyond the Empire's current capabilities, it made their fleet seem primitive in comparison. She couldn't deny the awe she felt. The legacy of this forgotten humanity was overwhelming, and Lyra's vision of a return to power was both intoxicating and terrifying. But there was one thing Solara couldn't ignore. The Empire's reach was vast, its hold on the galaxy unshakable. It was one thing to hide, to bide time and wait. It was another to go head-to-head with the full force of the Empire. "The Empire will stop at nothing to protect its grip on the galaxy," Solara said, her voice low but filled with resolve. "You may be prepared, but you will need more than just your technology to face them. You will need an army, a fleet, and the Empire has both." Lyra's eyes narrowed, but there was no anger in her gaze. She seemed to understand. "We have been preparing for this moment for centuries," she replied. "And we are not without allies. The Empire may believe it controls everything, but there are those who still remember the truth, who still understand the value of what we once built. There are those who will stand with us when the time comes." Solara's mind raced as the pieces of the puzzle began to click into place. Lyra's words weren't just a call to arms, they were a declaration of war. A war not fought with conventional weapons, but with knowledge, with technology, and with the deep-rooted connections they had carefully cultivated over centuries. These people, hidden for so long, were more than capable of challenging the Empire. They had just been waiting for the right moment to strike. The hum of energy in the room intensified, and Solara's communicator buzzed sharply. She knew it wasn't good news. The signal had spread across the Empire's network, and her superiors were already demanding answers. They had noticed the unusual fluctuations in the planet's energy readings, and their suspicions were growing. "Commander," a voice crackled over the comm. It was the voice of her superior officer, Admiral Veros. Report. We've detected strange energy signatures from your location. What is going on down there? Silara swallowed, a sense of dread creeping over her. She had been expecting this, but hearing Veros's voice made it all the more real. The Empire was watching. The Empire would come for this planet, for Lyra and her people. And when they did, they would stop at nothing to ensure they crushed whatever rebellion was brewing here. Silara's voice faltered. She could feel Lyra's piercing gaze on her, as though the leader could sense her inner conflict. Silara closed her eyes for a brief moment, steeling herself. I found something here. Something important. I'll need more time to assess the situation. There was a pause on the other end. I'll give you 24 hours, Commander. After that, we're sending in reinforcements to take control of the situation. The line went dead before Silara could respond. Her heart pounded in her chest. 24 hours. She had less than a day to decide what to do next, and the clock was ticking. She turned back to Lyra, her face resolute. I need to speak with you, alone. The two women moved to the far side of the chamber, away from the prying eyes of Silara's team. The weight of her next words felt like a noose tightening around her throat. The Empire is coming. They'll want to exterminate everything here, everything you've built. We can't fight them with just technology alone. You'll need allies. Lyra nodded, her expression unreadable. We have allies, but we may need more. Silara's heart clenched. She knew that whatever came next would change the galaxy forever. There was no going back. The tension between Silara and Lyra was palpable as they stood on opposite sides of the vast chamber, their minds racing with the same troubling realization. Time was running out. The Empire was closing in, and there was no more time to waste in idle conversation. The Empire had always been swift to act when it sensed a threat, and Silara had just given them the first hint of one. Lyra's face was still unreadable as she studied Silara. You understand what this means, she said, her voice steady, but carrying an undercurrent of urgency. If we are to stand a chance, we must move quickly. The Empire will not waste any time when they discover the truth. We must have a plan, and we must have it now. Silara nodded, her thoughts racing. Her loyalty to the Empire had always been absolute, until now. The decision she faced was monumental. She had spent her entire career rising through the ranks of the Empire, believing in its strength, its superiority, its inevitable triumph. But now, with the truth laid bare before her, the Empire's facade seemed fragile, its arrogance nothing more than a mask for a vast and brittle power structure. She had always thought she was serving the galaxy, but what if she had been serving an empire built on deception? I need to speak to my crew, Silara said quietly, looking over her shoulder at the small team who had followed her down to the surface. They'll have to make their own choice. Lyra's expression softened, though her eyes still burned with that inner fire. Of course, Commander. But be warned, not all of them may agree with you. Some may still be loyal to the Empire's lies. Silara turned to face her team, who were gathered at the far side of the chamber. They stood in a tight group, clearly nervous but waiting for her command. She had led them through countless battles, and they trusted her, but this was different. This was not a fight against another alien species, not a war for resources or territory. This was something more personal, more dangerous. The Empire's greatest threat wasn't some unknown enemy. It was the truth and the power it would awaken. She approached her team, each of them watching her with varying degrees of concern. She could feel their eyes on her, waiting for her to tell them what to do. She had always been their leader, but now, the question was no longer simple. She was no longer just a soldier. She was a part of something far larger than she could have ever imagined. Listen up, Silara began, her voice steady, but carrying the weight of the decision she had to make. What we found here, it's not just a discovery. It's a new beginning. These people, the ones you've seen, they're humanity's true heirs. The Empire has lied to us, and they will stop at nothing to erase this knowledge. But we have a choice to make. We can stand with them and risk being crushed under the weight of the Empire's wrath. Or we can stand with what we've uncovered here, with the truth. But make no mistake, if we choose that path, we are choosing to fight not just for survival, but for the future of the galaxy." There was a long, uncomfortable silence. Her team exchanged looks, unsure how to respond. The stakes were enormous, and Celera knew that some of them might not be able to take the leap. She had seen their loyalty to the Empire firsthand, and some of them might still hold on to the hope that the Empire could change, that it could be redeemed. But Celera knew better now. The Empire's reign was built on secrets, on the oppression of a truth that could not be buried forever. Finally, Lieutenant Rias, one of her most trusted officers, stepped forward. His face was pale, but his eyes were firm. "You've always led us through the darkest times, Commander," he said quietly. "But this is different. What you're saying, it's treason. If we side with them, we're not just defying the Empire. We're putting everything we've ever fought for at risk." Rias' words were sharp, and Celera could see the internal battle waging in his eyes. He had served with her for years, and his loyalty to her was undeniable. But the magnitude of the choice was sinking in. He wasn't alone in his hesitation. The others remained silent, each processing the enormity of the decision they were about to make. "Rias," Celera said softly, her voice carrying the weight of a leader who had already made up her mind. "I've spent my life fighting for the Empire's cause, but I've seen enough now. We cannot ignore the truth any longer. The galaxy needs to know what's been hidden from them. We have to stand with humanity's future, not the Empire's." For a moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, the members of her team began to step forward. They weren't all convinced, but they were willing to follow her. They had trusted her through everything, and now they were willing to trust her with their futures. Rias nodded, and with a heavy heart he said, "I'm with you, Commander." Celera exhaled, a sense of relief washing over her. She knew the decision had been made, and now there was no turning back. The Empire was coming, but humanity's legacy was not done. It was just beginning. The decision was made, but the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. Celera stood in front of her team, the weight of their collective choice heavy in the air. Each of them had pledged their loyalty to her, and in doing so, they had chosen to defy the Empire that had shaped their lives. There would be no easy road ahead. The Empire would come, and it would come with overwhelming force. But the galaxy was about to change, whether they were ready or not. Lyra stepped forward from the shadows of the chamber, her presence as commanding as ever. "Your courage will not go unnoticed," she said, her eyes glimmering with an intensity that matched the urgency of their mission. "This is only the beginning, Commander. If you are to truly stand with us, you must understand that the Empire will not stop until it crushes every last vestige of humanity's legacy. They will burn worlds to the ground to protect their lives." Celera nodded. "I understand. But we've already seen how fragile their grip is. We can't let them continue to rewrite history. We can't let them erase what humanity once was." Lyra gave her a small smile, a rare moment of warmth in her otherwise steely demeanor. "You are more than ready, Commander. But the real question is whether you and your people are willing to awaken the galaxy to the truth. The Empire will not fall easily, and they will do everything in their power to silence us before we can spread the knowledge of what we once were." Celera met Lyra's gaze with determination. "I'll do whatever it takes." The sound of approaching ships filled the air, a low hum that signaled the arrival of the Empire's first wave. Celera's heart skipped a beat. She had known this moment would come, but now that it was here, the reality was overwhelming. The Empire would never allow this rebellion to thrive. They would try to bury it before it could take root. She turned to her team, her voice firm. "We don't have much time. We need to prepare. They'll be here within hours, and we can't afford to be caught off guard." Lieutenant Rias moved swiftly to the console, already coordinating with the survivors to access the hidden defenses of the planet. The ancient technology that had been dormant for centuries was about to come online, and Celera hoped it would be enough to hold off the Empire's forces. But they couldn't rely solely on the technology. They had to strike quickly, and they had to strike hard. "Commander," Rias called out, his voice tense. "The Empire has already detected the anomaly. Their fleet is already deploying reinforcements to the sector. We got a window of less than 20 hours before they arrive in full force." Celera took a deep breath, her mind racing. She could feel the pull of history in this moment, as though she were standing at the crossroads of something far larger than herself. This was not just a battle for control of a single planet. It was a battle for the future of the galaxy. If humanity's legacy was to survive, they had to fight. And they had to win. "We need to send out a message," she said, turning to Lyra. "We need to let the galaxy know what we found. It's the only way we can rally more support." Lyra nodded, her expression resolute. "Agreed. I will work with your crew to transmit the truth to the farthest corners of the galaxy. But it will not be enough just to spread the message. We need to stand strong, to show the Empire that we will not be silenced." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, but Celera felt the truth in them. This was no longer just about survival. It was about changing the course of history. The Empire would fight to maintain its power, but Celera knew that the true power of the galaxy lay not in the hands of an empire built on lies, but in the hearts of those willing to fight for the truth. As the countdown to the Empire's arrival began, Celera stood with her team, the rebels who had once been soldiers loyal to the Empire. Now, they were something else, a force for change, a spark in the dark that could ignite a rebellion across the stars. "We will not back down," Celera said, her voice filled with the fire of newfound conviction. "We will make them see the truth. We will make them understand that humanity's legacy is not just a relic of the past. It is the key to the future." The ground trembled beneath their feet as the first of the Empire's ships touched down on the planet's surface, their massive forms casting long shadows across the ancient city. The time for hiding was over. The time for rebellion had come. Celera took one last look at her team. "It's time to fight." And with that, the first shots of the rebellion were fired.